Hey, I'm Jenny Davis, and welcome to the ABA Journal's 10 Questions Live, a monthly conversation with innovators, interrupters, and just plain interesting lawyers. I'm here today with Julianne Walsh. She's a Chicago attorney, and she's had kind of an interesting career trajectory. She's been able to direct and adapt her career in response to changes in the economy and also changes in her everyday life. Most recently and most notably, she's returned to the professional working world after taking a 5-year break to stay home with her kids. You can read the print interview with Julianne in the April 2016 issue of the ABA Journal, and you can also find it online at abajournal.com. Julianne and I are going to take the next 20 minutes or so and delve into the story behind her story, and we're also going to be answering questions that you have submitted. So thank you for doing that. If you are watching us live, you can still submit your questions for Julianne right now. The email address is on your screen. We will hopefully try to get to some of those questions for Julianne to answer now. And I'm just waiting for another couple minutes while people are joining us. Thank you for joining us. We have actually had record registration for this 10 Questions Live, which is really exciting. We've had a lot of questions, a lot of career advice questions that we are going to be looking forward to answering right here. But before we get into the career advice, I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the questions that's in the print interview. It's about what Julianne did before she went into law. She actually had another career. She worked in music marketing straight out of Nashville College. She went to Vanderbilt. And she worked in country music marketing with some of the biggest stars. I don't know all of them. She's going to be able to name check some. I'm much better with 90s hip-hop icons. But she's got some great stories. And I wanted to ask you, Julianne, to talk about some of the how you got that job, what you did, and some of the people that you worked with.
Okay, thanks for having me, Jenny. So when I was a senior in college, for one of my classes, I had to go get an internship, and we were right next to Music Row. So I went down and interviewed with RCA Records. And just so happens when I was in high school, not even thinking of the connection, I worked at Turtles Records and Tapes in Atlanta. And they seemed, they loved the connection and were like, perfect, come intern for us. So I did for first semester, and then they asked me to stay on second semester. And then when I was graduating, they offered me a job with their distribution company, BMG, and moved me to Chicago. So I did Midwest, the entire Midwest, just marketing, and worked with Arista and RCA Nashville. Some of their biggest artists included Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Pam Tillis, Kenny Chesney, Clint Black, Martina McBride, the list goes on. So luckily for me, I still don't to this day like country music, so it was easy for me to work with such big stars because I wasn't in awe of them, I guess. Maybe if Eddie Vedder was there, I probably would have fainted and wouldn't have been able to work. But yeah, I like that you're nodding too. So really what I would do, some of the things that we did were like in-store appearances where, Best Buy or a Walmart, like Clint Black would come to town, and I would set up in-store appearances where people would, buy a CD and get in line and have them sign them. We worked with radio stations. I did, any sort of marketing. It all revolved around selling records. So, and I did the entire Midwest. Went to a lot of state fairs, and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Right out of school, it was a great job to have. Met a lot of interesting people, and it sort of prepared me, or I didn't realize it was going to prepare me for my next steps.
So for our younger attendees, a record is a round black disc that plays music. Since we're going to be moving into some career advice and talking about how you shifted gears so many times in your career, were there skills that you learned in marketing that you, maybe not at the time, but as you moved forward in your career, in your law career, skills that you realized actually helped you be more agile?
I think it's not even just marketing. It was just sort of having a job, and being around people and having responsibilities. That sort, and especially right out of college when, your biggest responsibility is remembering to go to class. But I would say that, working with people and then also being creative, a lot of marketing is coming up with different ideas, and how to, get somebody interested in an album if they're not aware of it. I would say that mainly it's not even just the marketing, but it's sort of, just having the experience working with a bunch of different people. I worked with people that ran record labels. I worked with artists. I worked with clerks in the Best Buy. All different types of people, and you can learn a lot. One thing my dad always said is, in business, the best thing to do is answer all your emails and return your calls, and it's true. Be responsible, and I think that gets you a long way. And it's kind of the simplest thing, but I remember that was always people. Follow-up was the biggest thing I remember from that job, because you have to, or otherwise things fall through the cracks.
Now, you started off moving from law school to working at a big firm in the IP department, and then after several years you moved to real estate. And I wanted to ask you, I think there's a lot of lawyers out there that have gone from firms of different sizes, but I don't know very many who have actually jumped practice groups entirely. And I wanted to ask, what were some of the challenges that you faced in making such a drastic, or did you feel it was a drastic practice area shift?
Well, it started off, I was an IP because I thought, okay, it makes complete sense going from the music industry with copyrights and trademarks. That'll be my focus. And in law school, that was my focus. And I was also interested in a little bit of litigation. So when I went to work at the big firm, I was in the IP group, and at the time they had work, but it wasn't litigation. So I got involved with an attorney, a litigator in the real estate group, because that was their bread and butter at that time, and they had a lot of litigation that I could be a part of. So I sort of was straddling the groups at that time. So it seemed sort of like a natural change when I ended up moving into the real estate group, and this man became my mentor, and I just started doing more and more work for him, and then it turned into more and more of my time. So I think it made sense for everyone. It was sort of a natural progression.
Now, when you decided to jump from the real estate practice, to opening up your own solo practice doing real estate, you had said that you had transitioned out of that. You decided to close up your real estate solo practice because of the economy.
Yes.
And I love that you did your last deal in the delivery room, which is, I think, something that resonates with all the women here. I remember writing my last freelance story and timing my contractions with a little kitchen timer. So you had said when you decided to close your solo practice, that you had always intended to go back to practicing. When you closed your shop, did you have a strategy in place, or any kind of a time frame, or did you just hope to pick it up or start looking when you felt there was an aha moment, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, I sort of, at that point, it made sense to close down my practice because nothing was closing. And I, having two little kids, I was busy for a while, and then I always knew I wanted to go back, but there was never an aha moment. I guess the aha moment is when my son finally went to, full day preschool, and it was okay, now I actually have this time. You can make 100 excuses, and I did. But I really realized at that time, I have the time now where I feel like I really want to, get back in there and figure out what to do.
Did you miss it?
Practicing law?
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed, I like people. I like interacting with people. So when I had my solo practice, it was just me. That's why I didn't have anybody that could call someone to tell them that I was in labor. But yeah, I mean, there's certain aspects of it that I missed. I love research and writing and the people aspect of law. So I did miss that.
Now, I'm going to inject a reader question. What were some of the main obstacles hindering your path to reentering the workforce, and how did you overcome them?
biggest obstacle was fear. I felt paralyzed because I just didn't know what I wanted to do or how I was going to do it. And a lot of people, look at it as this great opportunity. Oh, you have a law degree, you can do so much with it. And then my next question would be like, okay, yeah, but what? And everyone was sort of like, well, and so that was sort of what I was running into. And I think once I just realized, all right, I'm ready to do this. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but I just need to start doing something. And that's when I just started talking to people. One of the first things I did is I went and sat with a headhunter, a legal headhunter. And he happened to be a friend of mine that used to work in the law firm that I did, and just decided he wanted a career change. So he's a legal headhunter. And not necessarily for looking for him to place me in something, because they would be all law jobs, just to sort of talk to somebody that left practicing law but is still sort of in the legal realm. And so that's where I started, and then he gave me some ideas and people to talk to, and then it just sort of rolled from there.
And here's I wanted to remind readers quickly that if you have a question for Julianne, the email address is in this bar right here under my name to submit some questions, and those will appear on our screen, and we'll try to get those in. Another reader question, when you were looking to return to work and to get a legal job, did you use any digital resources like LinkedIn?
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn for sure. I think that my father always was pressing me to create a profile. Usually when in business, like that's, the one place that people go, okay, let's see who, if they have a profile on LinkedIn. And mine is simple. It's pretty much my resume, but as time has gone on, I've added more, and you can connect with people, and then you can start, getting involved in different groups. And so, yeah, definitely on LinkedIn. I noticed that once I started putting my name out there, that, it tells you if people are looking at you. And I know that, when I started going and, having informational interviews, people were starting to look at my LinkedIn profile. So I think that's really helpful. I think that's a great idea to build on your profile.
Another reader question, when it came time to update your resume and to put into words your experience, how did you explain the time gap between jobs? And then knowing what you know now, would you have approached that differently, or do you have any advice for lawyers facing that right now?
It's interesting because a lot of people ask me that. They're like, what did you say? And I was like, well, I told them what I did. I mean, I stayed home. For me, the progression made sense a little bit because, in residential real estate, the market was changing, and it was sort of time to close that chapter. And just so happened that I had kids and waited to go back. So, you just create your story, no matter what it is. I mean, I have a friend that, left the law to go take care of, her mother, and that says a lot about your character. Just make it your story. And you have to realize there will be people that, say things or judge or whatever, and you just have to, own that. And also, too, like, you probably don't want to work for people that have a problem with somebody staying home and taking care of their kids, or, taking care of a sick relative or something like that. I mean, those are things to consider too.
Another reader question, if someone is looking to segue into a different practice group, or segue into some other type of career after maybe taking a break, how would you suggest that they get experience in a different area of law?
Well, sort of, yeah. So mine was sort of easy because I worked in a big firm, and so there was tons of different practice groups. I do think if you don't have that opportunity, or even in your firm, it's not easy to, start picking up cases from different practice groups. One thing that I started looking into, and this was when I was looking into a job, all law firms have pro bono opportunities, and I know that, asylum law, that was something that really interests me, and you can learn about international law, things like that. So if you pick up a pro bono case, pick it up in something that you're interested in, and you start learning about it, and that's sort of one way to do it. ABA, here we are, they have tons of different specialty groups, and I got involved in the intellectual property one, and there's, a women in intellectual property in Chicago, and different groups like that. And even like go so far as like back to your law school, which, remember they always, they have interest groups and they have pro bono work that you can get involved in as well, or even talk to some of your professors. But, that's sort of how I think that you can go about, because it's not that easy just to say to another partner, hey, I'd like to start in your law practice. It just sort of happened. They didn't have the kind of work I wanted in mind. So those are some of the things that I would suggest.
When you had said that you did a lot of great networking right where you were, on the playground.
Yes. That was it's whoever you're surrounded by. And even at school, I dropped the kids off. And that's actually how I, came to Next Point. Was I was talking to one of my friend of a friend, and she was like, oh my gosh, I used to work in this field, and I can, let you talk to somebody that's still in it. And so, yeah, I feel like if you just put it in the universe, and everyone I met, because I was always interested to hear what people do anyway, because not everybody enjoys their job, or, just sort of looking for something to click, or something I could fall into. But yeah, I just started asking everyone that I met.
You said that you would follow up, like taking your dad's advice and schedule lunches.
Definitely. That's, and I also think too, if you're, I was looking for a job, but I wasn't asking these people for a job. It was more like, okay, tell me what you do, tell me what the pros and cons, tell me, if I wanted to, where would I start, what are some of the positions. So it's more of an informational interview kind of thing. And I feel like that's, people love to, if you're going to take someone to lunch or coffee or whatever, and sort of, get their story and how they got there and who they met. People love to talk, not just about themselves, but, their career paths. And I found that, and especially with women, everybody was really happy, to talk to me and understands how hard it is to get back into the workforce.
And when you came on to Next Point, you were not in-house counsel. You were in a different position using your legal experience, but not in a traditional sense. Can you explain a little bit about what you did at Next Point? And also, I guess, were you nervous about taking a job that wasn't as cut and dry as what you might have been used to in a traditional firm setting?
Absolutely, yes. So what I do, it was more, people would ask me like about the contracts or things like that. I wasn't the in-house attorney. I was their attorney in residence. So they sell software to attorneys, and wanted, sort of a liaison, and also too, the cloud and cybersecurity. It's so foreign to so many people, and so foreign. It was so foreign to me too. That's another thing. I went on all these different websites and joined their newsletters or daily emails or whatever, and then I just started reading everything that I could to just find out, what's out there, and then part of my role was to educate, Next Point, as well as our some of our clients on what's going on. The federal rules changed, or this is what's going on in cybersecurity laws, and just being more of an educational role than before, where I'm doing writing briefs and researching topics like that. So. Very nerve-wracking, was worried that I wasn't going to know what I was going to do, and half the time, and I could carve my own path that way, which was great. But it's exciting. I think learning something new for me is exciting, and I spent a lot of nights sitting up and reading articles. But yeah, I'm sorry, what was your last question? You asked me if it was nerve-wracking. I'm like, yeah, and then
No, that was it. That was perfect. Okay, going back to when you took that break, you had mentioned in the print story that you felt a little tension between people that were still in the working world, in the legal world, and maybe who didn't, weren't as accepting of your decision to take a break. One of our readers had asked if you felt a backlash, and I was wondering, did it rise to the level of a backlash, or where was this tension coming from, and how did it manifest?
Well, I wouldn't call it a backlash. It's more judgment. People saying, how could you spend money on your degree and not use it? Or, yeah, it's basically just like, you have these degrees. I don't understand why you're staying home. You're wasting, your education. But that was always from someone that worked. And, you put enough pressure on yourself and feel guilty about enough things. You don't need other people's judgment. So it wasn't really backlash. I mean, and now, I'll go to meetings and with female lawyers that didn't take time off, only took maternity leave and practice and work full time. And there's a little bit of that tension still where people are like, oh, well, you're just getting back into this. And it's just one of those things, everybody takes different paths in life, and you just have to be comfortable with it, and just accept, your choices. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And even some of people that you wouldn't expect it from say some pretty hurtful things to moms, and there are a lot of smart stay-at-home moms. It's just trying to get back into the workforce is tough.
There's a lot of really well-oiled cookie drives.
Exactly. Good point.
Here's another question from a reader, and it's I thought it was an interesting one. This reader asked, how important was it that you had come from a big firm that had name recognition when you made your career changes? So did you feel like you had almost like a brand name endorsement because you had this big firm name on your resume? And do you think that was helpful to you in your career transitions?
I mean, I think yes and no, perfect lawyer answer, right? Let's just go to both sides. But yes, in the sense, yeah, I had this big name behind me. So when I was, showing people my resume, they're like, oh, okay, she went here, she did this. And they recognized that. It was good to understand the big firm mentality. And I think there are a lot of positives coming from a big firm. But coming from a smaller firm or somebody that's not as have the name recognition, think about it. You probably as an associate get to do a lot more things than people in, associates in big firms do. You're going to the courtroom a lot more because you don't have the staff that they do. So you're getting sort of more involved in the cases. Maybe they're not as high profile from some of these bigger firms, but you're actually getting in the nitty gritty and practicing law instead of just, having boxes and boxes dumped on you and, looking for a needle in a haystack kind of thing. So I think, you can look at it both ways. You certainly don't need to go get that experience if you don't have it. Just spin your experience in a positive way.
I like that, what you said earlier about owning your story and owning your experience. I think that's going to be very important for people going forward. Now, was there a reason why you didn't want to just pick up your solo practice where you had left off?
Yeah, I guess because I really didn't want to practice law again like that. I knew I didn't want to go back to a law firm. And, here's another thing, like the way things just sort of fall into a path. During the time when I left the big law and started my own practice, that's when a lot of my friends were, buying places, or a lot of people that I know were buying places. And so it was great. It's like word of mouth, here's business. And realizing I could have gone back into it, I have a lot of people that still ask me if I do it. It was just something I knew I wanted to try something new at this point. There was no, there's no right or wrong. It just was, I just wanted to try something new.
Well, and that segues to our last question. What's next for you? What are you doing now and what's next?
Well, I feel like I'm learning something new almost every day. I think it's because I started in a different sector. I really enjoy the tech sector. I feel like I'm learning a lot. I'm becoming an expert in security. Frightening. But I don't know. I've met a lot of people. I've gotten on a lot of committees where I feel like everything's opening up to me, and I'll figure it out. I don't know exactly where I'll, if you ask me where I'll be in 5 years, I don't know, but I can tell you that I will be working. So I'm enjoying it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And if you like this conversation and you'd like to join us again, we will be doing it again Thursday, May 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be talking to Judge Phyllis Fry, and she is the first openly transgender judge in the nation. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.